Story card writing. This is the activity in which we create the user stories that fill our backlogs. These, again, are the feature sets and the different things that we want to produce for a client and a product owner who are asking for certain feature functionality out of whatever it is that we're building. Uh, we talk about them as being a single unit deliverable for an agile team, and that means they should stand on their own. They should be something that you can recognize, and they should be something that could be deliverable with recognizable feature functionality and some kind of value to both the product owner and to the customer, the end user or the customer. Their sentences too, they're very lightweight. You can see this on the right-hand side. You can see this card that's been mocked up with a pattern that is typically used for story points. As a user role or as a somebody, I want to do something, an immediate goal or something that they want to achieve, so that they achieve some sort of value or they get something done. So it's very lightweight. It's written in English. It's written in a way that anybody can read it. When I say it's written in English, I mean it's non-technical. The story is written in a non-technical way. The technical stuff comes later. We leave that up to the folks that do the how, the folks that actually build whatever it is that they're going to ask for on this card. We leave that up to those experts. We're not trying to be the expert when we're writing up the user stories or requesting feature functionality. So this idea around a story card is being able to allow anyone to look at what the requests are and be able to understand what they are, because they don't have to understand the technology or the tool sets behind building whatever it is we're trying to ask for or whatever we're trying to achieve. So some key things: it must be testable. It should include what we call acceptance criteria, meaning I can actually see that it's doing what it is that I want it to do. I can check it off almost like a checklist. Now, that doesn't mean the tests that we do to make sure that it does that functionality, but the high-level feature set. If I want to create a story where it says, I want to print as a salesperson, I want to print a report so that I can review my sales for the month, you can see it fits this storyline. It fits the as a user role, that's the salesperson. I want to print a report, that's my immediate goal, so that I can actually review my sales, or I can do something with my sales, whatever it is that I want to achieve. So it's very easy to understand. And reading down what that acceptance criteria might look like, it could be something as simple as I can print the report. The report has all my sales on it for the month. I can actually look at those sales and I can see which ones are certain types of criteria. And they're very, very humanistic type things that we're looking for when we talk about acceptance criteria. The next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about what makes a good user story. So we'll get into that a little bit deeper. But the details are elaborated via a conversation between the customer, a developer, QA, whoever's involved in creating this thing, and whoever's involved in building it, plus whoever's connected to the customer itself. Usually it's the product owner in the Scrum world. So this idea of a promise for a conversation, we're trying to get the folks that typically are disconnected in a lot of traditional business structures, the business side of the business and the developing or the software, the technology side of the business. The idea behind story cards was to bring these two sides together and have them communicating in a common language so that they can interact well and that they can actually create something very quickly, very efficiently, effectively. The folks who are actually building it aren't frustrated because they built something that didn't meet what the customer wanted. The customer doesn't ask for something and then get something that doesn't fit their needs. We just we streamline a lot of this, and we create a lot of double work and rework and a lot of misunderstandings and miscommunication or different things like that. That just gets removed from the equation when you use this process. And it's very fast. It's very easy to move things around. It's very easy to reprioritize. There's a lot of benefits to it. But this is really the idea about this is kind of the art, and it really is an art as much as it is a science around story writing itself. You can see on this example here, it's got a story number. We'll talk about story points a little bit when we talk about sizing and estimating how big a story is or how much effort it's going to take. But this is really the concept around story writing itself. When you talk about a story, what makes a good story, for folks that are new to writing stories, What's really helpful is this invest idea. Now, this comes out of Mike Cohn's book around user stories. It's been around for quite some time. It's kind of like the standard for user story writing, and you'll find it in the Agile discussion guide. We actually talk about it in there in those pages, and this idea around invest is really a great way to keep yourself, even if you're experienced at it. Sometimes people get out of the habit of writing good stories because they feel like they've gotten it down. They take shortcuts. It's a good thing to make sure that you're doing this. You can check your user stories to see that you're writing things that are going to be easily recognizable, translatable, consumable from both sides. The how side, the technical side, where people are actually building the things that are being requested, and the what side, making sure that the product owner and the client are in alignment, that the product owner understands what clients and users are looking for when they write these stories. Because typically the product owner, that role, is writing these stories the very first time that they're being put into a backlog, and then they're being reviewed and talked to. That idea for a promise for a conversation, they're bringing other folks into this. They're bringing the folks that do the development, do the building of whatever it is being requested into that conversation. So let's talk about what these items are. There's 6 of them here. The idea that it's independent, it's negotiable, it's valuable, it's estimatable, it's small, and it's testable. That's where you get the INVEST acronym from. Now, independent means it can stand on its own. The idea of breaking work down into smaller feature sets, that's key to Agile. Small when you first start doing this is probably pretty big. That's okay. As you get used to it, you'll start to find ways and see ways to get things smaller, to get things kind of broken down into smaller bits, to the point where it's small enough. You don't want to go too small. You don't want to go to the task level where you're actually just doing tasks, because that isn't something that's valuable to the customer. This independent thing is, and we talk about valuables, the third item. The value has to be there. The story should be written in such a way, the size, that you can get it done quickly, but there's some recognizable value at the end of finishing that card. It's something that the user could say, yeah, okay, I can do something new. I can do something different with this. I have more capability now than I did before. This idea around, so that's independent. It stands on its own, and that it doesn't rely, you try to minimize, it's not always possible, but you try to minimize how much this card relies on other cards, other story cards in the backlog, in order to make the feature set or the functionality that you want work. Once that's done, it's nice when you can get them independent, because now they can ship, they can be turned on, you're not waiting to get that finished functionality out to somebody, because you're waiting on another card or another couple cards that have to be done in order to make this happen. Sometimes when that does happen, you've gone too small. You've gone to the task level where you still have other things you have to do, or it's just a matter of you're not proficient enough, or you haven't been doing this long enough to just recognize how to get it down a little bit smaller. But that's okay. That comes with time. There's no problem with that. So independent is trying to keep it from being dependent on other stories. Negotiable, you've got to be able to talk about it. People have to be able to understand the story and be able to talk back and forth about what the story is, about what its value is, about what do you mean by this? What do you mean by that? You can actually have a good conversation around it. So when you write it in this format, this as a blank, I want to blank so that I can blank. It helps to keep it negotiable, helps to keep the idea that you can talk about it back and forth. A product owner can talk to clients or end users about, is this more valuable than that, and why. They can understand that. And then when they have conversations to the development group, they can look at that development group and say, hey, this is why we want to do this card first. This is why I want to do that card first. Now, maybe you can't do it in that order because the technology doesn't allow you to do it. But then if that's the case, product owner can take that back to users and say, this is why we're going to do it in this order. We know exactly why your values are this, that, and the other. Here's how we're going to get that done. Here's how we're going to achieve that. But you're negotiating all along this chain between user all the way to the folks that are developing it, and the product owner kind of helping to bring all that together. That user story becomes the negotiable piece, and the thing that you kind of keep you use as that conversation piece to make this happen. We talk about it as being a promise for a conversation. That's exactly one of the things we're talking about, having it to be negotiable like that. The idea around value. If it's not valuable, if you can't tell me why this is valuable to you as a product owner, I'm going to have a hard time putting that high in the priority list of what we're trying to do if you don't understand the value of it. Because all you're doing is you're giving me feature sets or things to work on, but you can't tell me why it's valuable. If that's the case, the story probably isn't ready to be done. Even if it could be done, even if the technology's there, the team knows what to do, even if the feature set could be produced and you could get the functionality, is it a good idea to actually put that out there as a first thing? The invest principles kind of say, this story isn't ready yet. If you can't tell me what the value is, it shouldn't be taking up, you shouldn't be taking up time with your development group to be talking about it if you can't, as a user or as a stakeholder, define the value of this thing. And the product owner doesn't understand the value and be able to communicate that to the team, because the team, the development team or the delivery team may develop it in a different way depending on how the value is. There may be 2 or 3 ways to develop it, but if they understand what's valuable about this card, they would go, well, we're going to do it this way because that'll achieve what you're looking for the best, even though I could do it 2 other ways. So valuable is really, really important. Estimatable, meaning you have to understand you have to be able to figure out how big it is, how much effort it's going to be, how much time it's going to take, how many people how much talent is going to need to be on that team, and what type of talent is going to need to be on that team in order to get this thing done. The idea around small, again, we talked about that a little bit in the last slide. We want to make these small enough pieces that we can get things out. Now, when they're small, they're more likely independent. So the nice thing about small is it helps negotiable because it's a smaller thing to talk about. There's fewer moving parts, and it helps keep it independent. So small is a great place to start as a new story writer, because if you can keep things and keep trying to drive towards small, you're usually simplifying the effort to get it done. You're simplifying the complexity of its interdependency across other stories that you've got in the backlog. And it's easier to understand and negotiate and figure out what the value is, what done looks like, and all these other things. So small is a really, really key part. Testable. Obviously, it has to be testable. Why? Because you have to be able to show that it does what it is you did. So the idea around negotiable also talks about, hey, I understand what done looks like. If I understand what done looks like and what it's supposed to do as a development or delivery team, I can look at this and say, okay, so here's how we're going to test that to ensure that this is done. Now, again, part of the negotiable aspect of a story is being able to talk about done with the product owner and have the product owner be able to talk about what done looks like to stakeholders and end users. So they all, you can see these items around invest, they all kind of tie together again. And there's a lot more around this. Again, this isn't just a class around story writing, but this is a really key element because, again, in the Scrum world, when you're using Scrum as a framework to drive agile teams and to drive work through a system in an agile way, this concept around stories is key and central to everything that happens, because that's where the conversation starts about anything that is going to be done, anything we're planning to do, and tying it into everything that's already been done. So it's really, really key in itself.